Hey everybody, and welcome back to some more All the Mods 3 Expert Mode. Last episode, we were working on making our way through pretty much all of Tier 0, with the end goal being to set up our first Tinker's Construct Smeltery. And between episodes, what I've done is I've continued to make yet more seared stone. We now have 20 in our inventory, and we also have more of the molten grout waiting in the porcelain alloy tank, because a few of the smeltery parts, for example, the casting table and the casting basin, require the previous tier of porcelain basin with molten grout poured over it. And so having a little extra in here is going to help us out in just a second. But the very first thing that we're going to do in today's episode is craft up a regular vanilla Minecraft furnace, which is not only going to make it quicker and easier for us to turn our raw meats into something that gives us a decent amount of hunger, which previously we were doing with the drying rack, but also it's going to allow us to finally make some torches, which is going to allow us to light up the area and hopefully stop quite so many mobs spawning in the evening. And so let's go ahead and for now just throw this down right about here. You'll also notice that between episodes I have spent a bit of time trying to organize things. I've built a nice little fenced area for us, a few more chests, and tried to organize all of the things that we made in the last episode. But let's go ahead and grab some of our wood, which I have gathered more of between episodes, and let's get our first few pieces of charcoal cooking up so we can make just a couple of torches and start to light this area up. I would also like to get on to doing some mining later today as well, and so we will be needing torches for those mining trips. However, it would appear that this does not work. Does it tell me that in the book here? Normally, you'd have a furnace done on your first Minecraft night, but that's not how we do things here. With your seared brick, you can finally make a furnace you've wanted for so long. However, it would appear that the furnace does not take wood as a fuel, and so presumably, I have to go and actually get some coal to actually smelt that wood into charcoal, which of course defeats the point of turning oak wood into charcoal, because we can just use coal for our torches. But I didn't know that. That's news to me. I really thought that would work. Nevertheless, let's go ahead and look and see if we can't complete the final quest here before we move on to tier 1 and see about getting into a little bit of immersive engineering and then maybe some industrial craft too as well. And so to get our smeltery up and running, I've bookmarked pretty much everything we need here on the left-hand side. We need one controller, one tank, one drain. I believe the quest wants 2 faucets, although we really only need one to actually get the smeltery up and running, one casting basin, and one casting table. Now, as I mentioned previously, a lot of these recipes are the old porcelain versions with molten grout poured over them. So if we put our casting table into the casting basin and pull the molten grout over it, that should get us the regular casting table from Tinker's Construct. We are going to have to get a few more porcelain bricks actually, because we need to put a porcelain basin into this porcelain basin in order to get the non-porcelain seared casting basin. So let's see about getting a little bit more of this unfired porcelain, which is actually a good time for me to mention a little bit of a mistake that I made in the last episode. And that mistake is thinking that nether quartz was not something that we were able to get. We spent a lot of time, like way too much time in the last episode, fighting skeletons to get a large amount of bone meal for all of the unfired porcelain that we needed, and it turns out that that wasn't strictly necessary. If we take a look at this cave that I've marked down over here, or really anywhere that you can find ore, which is really anywhere in this pack, if we take a look at the quest book here, you'll see the first quest says that ores generate differently than you might be used to. No more are the days of setting up massive strip mines to get ores. Ores in the overworld will now generate on exposed stone, both underground, in caves, and on the surface. So there's a lot more exposed ore all over the place. You can see there's a little cave here. I've also waypointed a cave over here that we'll check out in a little bit. But if we quickly head on down here, we'll probably fairly quickly find a little bit of nether quartz. We didn't find any there, but I'm fairly certain that there is some over in this cave. And so I would like to get to bed fairly soon here, but that ore right there. And you know what? We'll go and grab some real quick. We might have to fight 1 or 2 mobs while we're down here. And also, it might be a little bit dark because we don't quite yet have the torches. But whilst we're down here, we can, of course, also grab a little bit of that coal right there and use that to our advantage as well. But this right here is quartz ore from Thaumcraft. And if we break this, we get some nether quartz. Nice. And so if you're starting out with this pack and you don't want to have to fight so many skeletons in the early game, especially when you don't have particularly good weapons or armor, you can come down and do a little bit of mining and grab some nether quartz, and that's going to make getting that porcelain just that little bit easier. But for now, we do have quite a bit of bone meal still available on the surface, and so for us, getting more of that porcelain clay should not be too difficult. So let's head back, let's set up some torches, let's sleep so that we don't get attacked by mobs and don't have to fight any more skeletons, and then let's see if we don't have what it takes to get our first Tinker's Construct Smeltery up and running. Alright, so now we can go ahead and craft up some regular Minecraft sticks, like so, and then we can craft those up with the coal to get our initial set of torches. Very nice indeed. If we go ahead and hit F7, we can see the light levels around here, and we really want to try and make these all green if we can. If they're red, that means mobs can spawn. If they're green, it means that mobs will not spawn. By default, that hotkey is bound to F4, by the way, so if you're starting on a fresh world, then F4 is the key that you want to press to get this overlay. I've tweaked mine to make it F7 because that's the normal key that you press to get the light level overlay in some other packs, but nevertheless, this is hopefully going to make it so we don't get any mobs spawning like in this area here and also in the area just around the outside of our base. We can, of course, put more down in the future, but for now, let's head on back over to our chest. Let's grab some bone meal and some bones. Let's grab some of that massive amount of clay that we gathered between episodes, and let's see about getting quite a bit more of this unfired porcelain, which of course we're going to go ahead and put on our drying rack. Between episodes, I did go and gather quite a little bit more meat just to make sure that we have food available for us in today's episode. And so now we do have quite a bit of bacon jerky, as well as a good chunk of beef jerky as well. Always nice to have. Once we've got all of these, we can make ourselves another basin. And then let me check the quest real quick here, because we have the seared stone, we have the casting table, we can get the basin. The seared faucet requires 2 regular porcelain faucets. We then need the drain, which requires porcelain bricks, so 4 brick, and that will get us the drain. We then need the tank, which is 8 porcelain brick with some glass. And then finally, we need the controller, which is a porcelain melter with 3 seared stone, 4 brick, and then 1 tin ingot. I do want to try something real quick, because I think you might be able to use a regular non-porcelain faucet on the alloy tank. So if we take one of these faucets and put it in the basin, we can then pull the grout over it and create a seared faucet. I think we can then take that seared faucet, put it back on the alloy tank, and use that to pour grout over future items. So for example, if we get rid of this and then place it in the basin, replace it with the seared faucet, hopefully we could still pull the grout out. We can, cool. So we don't have to make any more seared faucets. We don't have to waste our porcelain brick on that, which is good. We can then make ourselves a porcelain casting basin. We can then go ahead and craft 4 of these together into porcelain brick, like so, which is going to get us the drain, I believe it was. We then need at least 8 more plus 1 glass to get ourselves the tank. Now, glass we do not have yet, and I'm assuming that the way that we do this is with sand in the regular furnace. We can. However, we do need some kind of fuel in here, and as we have just used all of our coal on making torches, it's probably about time that we head on over and get a little bit more mining done here. Now, we did actually make this in the last episode, the Vitrified Sand Pickaxe Head, which is slightly better than the Flint Pickaxe Head that we currently have. And so before we head down, it might not be a terrible idea to quickly do an upgrade on our flint tool. All we have to do is put the flint pickaxe in the center and then add in the new part anywhere in the tool station, and that will essentially replace the flint tool head with the new vitrified sand tool head, thus taking our durability from 215 up to 465, but more importantly, taking our mining level up from tin to bronze, so we can mine high levels of ores with this new vitrified sand pickaxe. And so what I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to go away, I'm going to try and mine a little bit more coal, a little bit more tin. I'm also going to finish up making all of the porcelain brick that we need and getting all of the grout that we need, and I'll be back in a second to set up our first Tinker's Construct Smeltery. Okay, so quite a bit of mining later, we now have a good chunk of iron, copper, and tin. I did have to go a little bit further down to get to the copper, but I know we are going to need it later on in today's episode, so definitely worth picking that up. And I think we should now have pretty much everything it takes to make all of the parts for the smeltery. The only things that we are missing are the brick for the controller. We need 4 brick here. We also need 1 tin ingot, and I don't know actually if we can just smelt the tin in the furnace. We can. Okay, cool. We can also put it through the melter if we like, but there's really no need. Instead, all we're going to do real quick here is just put 1 tin ore in there. Once that's done, we can put the clay back in and start working on the other things that we need. For example, now that we have 1 glass, we can craft that with 8 porcelain brick to get the porcelain tank, and of course, pull some seared grout over that to get the seared tank. And other than that, I think we have pretty much everything. We've got the drain, we've got the faucets, we've got the basin, we've got the table, we've got a good amount of seared stone. All we need now is the actual smeltery itself. And so for that, we're going to take this porcelain melter, and we're also going to grab hopefully 4 brick from here, which should be done any second now, and I think that is everything it takes to make a smeltery. It is. Nice. And that will be tier 1 completed. And at that point, I actually don't think that we need this setup anymore either. I think it is probably worth getting the remaining bits of seared stone that we can out of this setup, but once we've got all the molten ground out of the alloy tank, I think we're in the clear to tear down pretty much everything else here and replace it with a regular old smeltery from Tinker's Construct, which can do everything this setup can do and more. So we'll tear this down and we'll replace it with a basic setup. The one downside to the smeltery from Tinker's Construct is that it cannot be run off of wood. We can't use any regular fuel source like coal or wood or charcoal to power the smeltery. Instead, we do need to go and find a source of lava. Thankfully, between episodes, I did do a little bit of exploration, and there is an above-ground source of lava a little over in that direction, just kind of past our cave waypoint. I think for now, we're going to start with a very small smeltery, and by that I mean essentially a smeltery with one block in the middle, just because we don't really have that much seared stone just yet. And so really what I'm talking about is essentially one block in the ground like that. We're going to have the controller at the front like so. We'll have the seared tank on either side. For now, we'll go with the left. We'll have our seared drain right about here. These can go basically anywhere, by the way. They don't have to be in this specific orientation. And then finally, we will have another seared stone at the back like so, and that should be an actual smeltery up and running. It's a very small one, but as soon as you get the light particle effects on the front here, you know your smeltery is ready to go. And if we wanted to, we could make this taller by doing something like this. By default, this little smeltery that we had at the start here only has one slot, so it is very limited on how many items it can hold. You can increase the number of slots by adding more seared stone as you go upwards, like this. So now we'll have a total of 3 slots, and going forward, we will make our smeltery much wider and much deeper as well to make sure that it can hold even more slots. Now, one question that I do have here is, can we make seared stone by melting down cobblestone? We can. Nice. So this is one of the benefits to having the smeltery, is that we can put cobblestone in here, and that cobblestone, once we add lava, will melt down into seared stone that we can then pull out into our casting basin and then use to expand our smeltery and make it much, much larger. Now, as I mentioned, we do need lava. And the good thing about the seared tank here from Tinker's Construct is that it retains its fluid inventory even when you break it. And so what we can do here is if we really quickly actually grab ourselves a bucket, we can head on over to the pool of lava, fill this tank up over there, and then bring it back and put it right back down next to our smeltery. Now, it would appear that once again we have hit a roadblock here, and that roadblock is that we cannot smelt iron ore in the furnace. It would seem that only the tin ore can actually be smelted in the regular Minecraft furnace. The iron ore has to be smelted down in the smeltery. Copper ore, however, can be made in a regular furnace as well. Okay, in that case then, do we have any other kinds of buckets? We don't have any other metal buckets, like we can't make a tin bucket, but what we can do is we can make clay buckets. Now, I'm fairly certain that the tank from Tinker's Construct can only hold 4 buckets worth of fluid, and so what I'm going to do here is grab 4 unfired clay buckets, smelt those up into usable clay buckets, and then we'll head over and we'll use those to move lava from the world into our tank. The reason we need 4 of them is because if you use a clay bucket to pick up lava, when you empty the bucket will be destroyed. So this bucket is essentially a one-time use bucket until we can get some lava. Once we have lava, we can use that lava to power our smeltery, and of course use our smeltery to make iron ingots and get ourselves some more buckets. And so what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to sleep first because it's getting a little dark, but after we have slept, I'm going to grab the final clay bucket, and I'm going to head on over to this lava source, which if I press J, you can see is right there at the bottom of the map. And so let's go ahead and grab some lava. And a quick trip to the lava pool later. We now have a seared tank that is full to the brim with lava ready for our smeltery to use. And so on the way back, I did do a little bit of mining to get us this 8 gold ore that we're going to need if we want to make any of the casts. Specifically, the first cast that we're going to need is the Ingot Cast here, which of course is going to allow us to make ingots like the iron ingots that we're going to need to make some of these Industrial Craft 2 machines, and the bronze ingots that we're going to need to make this blast brick. Because if we go ahead and look at tier 1 here in the quest book, the first quest wants us to hand in 4 iron ingots, 4 copper ingots, and 4 tin ingots. The tin and the copper and not too bad. We can just go ahead and throw 4 copper in there. That's going to smelt up, and then we can do the tin afterwards. But as we saw before we left, the iron cannot be smelted in a regular furnace. It has to be made in the smeltery, and in order to pull that iron out in ingot form, we're going to need an ingot cast. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put our casting table here with a faucet. I'm also going to go ahead and put our casting basin right about here, just in case we need to pull anything out into a basin. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put 2 gold into the smeltery. That 2 gold is then going to get pulled out over an ingot, and that will create an ingot cast. And unlike the clay casts that we made in the last episode, these golden casts are reusable as many times as we would like. And I'm fairly certain that a brick does count as an ingot. And so I think what we can do is put our brick into here and then pull the gold over that brick, thus creating an ingot cast. And at that point, we can then go ahead and throw some iron in here. And once that iron has melted, we can pull it out via the ingot cast to get us iron ingots. Or if we wanted to, we could put even more iron in. And once we got 9 ingots worth of iron, we could pull it out in the casting basin and make a full block worth of iron. Now, whilst we wait for the iron to smelt up, let's go ahead and smelt up 1 more piece of copper and then a bit more tin. But let's look ahead at the next couple of quests here. So the next quest wants us to make the engineer's hammer. This is made with 2 sticks, 2 iron, and then 1 iron gear. Again, much like the iron ingot, the iron gear cannot be crafted. It has to be made either in a metal bender, a casting table, or a metal press. And as of right now, the casting table is all that we have. And so we have to pull 4 ingots worth of iron over a gear cast. The gear cast is made in the exact same way as the ingot cast. You put a gear into the casting table, pull 2 buckets worth of gold over it, and that will make a gear cast. And so let us go ahead and put yet more gold in there. I'm fairly certain that gold won't mix with iron. One thing that the smeltery does differently to the melter that we had earlier is that if you put 2 ingots in here that can form an alloy, those ingots will combine into an alloy. So for example, if we were to put both copper and tin into this smeltery, instead of being separated like this is currently separated into gold and iron because gold and iron can't mix together. But if this was copper and tin, those would then mix together to give us 4 ingots worth of bronze, which is definitely going to be useful because the next quest on after we get the engineer's hammer is this quest right here, Get Blasted, which wants us to craft 27 blast brick, which is exactly what we need to make a blast furnace. And the blast brick is crafted with regular brick, porcelain brick, and bronze ingots. That's why I've smelted up so much brick, and that is why we have got so much copper and tin. So let's throw our tin in here for now, just to complete that first ingot quest. Let's also go ahead and make ourselves our first gear. Now, I'm fairly certain that the easiest gear that we can make to get the cast is a stone gear, which, if memory serves me right, is 4 sticks and then 4 cobblestone like that. That's going to get us a stone gear from Thermal Foundation, which we can then go ahead and put into our casting basin. You do want to make sure that the gold is at the bottom of the smeltery. To do that, you just click on the gold. It'll move it to the bottom. We can then right click. That's going to pull the gold out. And voila, we have ourselves a gear cast. Nice. So we'll go and we'll put some more iron in here. We are going to need at least 4 iron ingots in the smeltery to get our first gear out. The tin is now done, which is great. And I think what we should probably focus on real quick before we continue to try and use the smeltery in its current form is maybe making the smeltery a little bit bigger, because as you can see right now, the thing that's really slowing us down is the fact that we can only put 3 iron ore into this smeltery at any given time. And so I think what we should probably do is grab our cobblestone, put the cobblestone in there, and start producing some seared stone that we can then turn into more seared brick that we can then use to make our smeltery even taller, if not maybe also a little bit wider as well. Now, I do want to check actually, can we put compressed cobblestone into the smeltery in order to make that faster? It doesn't look like we can. Let me check the recipe for seared stone here. So we can pull that out of the smeltery, and then seared stone can be made by melting stone, which gets you 1 ingot's worth, and cobblestone, which also gets you 1 ingot's worth. And then there doesn't seem to be anything else. Yeah, nothing else along here that we can make that would make this easier for us. I know in some packs you were able to put compressed cobblestone in there and thus get a lot more seared stone a lot faster. Now that 3 cobblestone got us 216 millibuckets worth of seared stone, and if I'm not mistaken, you need 288 millibuckets in order to get a block's worth. You do indeed. So you need at least 4 cobblestone per piece of seared stone. And so what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to go away. I'm going to put a bunch of cobblestone into the smeltery. I'm going to keep getting some more seared stone. Once you have enough seared stone, we can then pull that out into the casting basin to make more seared stone. So I'm going to go away. I'm going to make more seared stone. I'm going to make our smeltery bigger. and taller, and I'll be back in a second. You know what? Actually, what I'm going to do, instead of doing it this way, which is just very, very slow, instead, what I'm going to do here is make a wooden hopper from Tinker's Construct. This is made with 1 chest and then 5 oak wood planks, or you can make them with any planks, I guess, but oak wood are the planks that we have. And so with this, what we should be able to do is pump things directly into the smeltery. And so instead of having to come over and manually put in 3 cobblestone every time that the previous cobblestone ran out, we can just put a bunch of cobblestone into a chest on top of this hopper, or even just into this hopper directly, and that will be slowly but surely fed into the smeltery, so that when we come back, we should see a nice large amount of seared stone in there that we can then pull out one at a time into our casting basin. So while we wait for that, I'm going to go ahead and pull out this here, which for whatever reason is not working. Oh, there we go. I'm not quite sure why that didn't work a second ago when it was in there before, but quick heads up, if it doesn't work the first time, just take the cast out and put it back in. It might work the second time. But once we have it, we can then go and craft up some sticks, throw those in like this with at least 1 iron ingot. We do need at least 1 more as well, actually. So I will quickly replace one of those if I can, which I can't. And so in that case, I will just quickly take that out and do that. There we go. That's going to get us that 1 last piece of iron, which of course we want in ingot form. And that's going to finally get us the hammer that we need in order to make the blast furnace. Now, looking a little bit further ahead, we need to make a bunch of machines from Industrial Craft 2. And if we look at the recipe for the macerator, for example, here, it requires 3 slag, which we get from the blast furnace. We'll get to that in a little bit here. We need some concrete, which we can make with either slag or sand, as well as clay, gravel, and water. We also, crucially, need an electronic circuit which requires copper cable, and the copper cable requires rubber. Now, the rubber is acquired through Industrial Craft 2 rubber trees, and I did spot a few of them fairly close by over by the large lake that I did quite a bit of my sand, gravel, and clay harvesting at. And so, before we head out, actually, we need to make ourselves a tree tap. Now, the tree tap is made entirely from wood, and so for now, I'm just going to take this out. We can make that again a little later on down the line. But if we do something like this, we can get a tree tap from Industrial Craft 2. And just to be safe, I'm going to go and make 2 of these. And essentially, each of the rubber trees from Industrial Craft 2 will have little bits of sap somewhere on the tree. And if you right-click those pieces of sap with the tree tap, they will pop off a little bit of resin, which we can then smelt down into rubber from Industrial Craft 2. If we look at JEI here, you can see the sticky resin can be smelted into rubber, and then later on down the line, once we get ourselves an extractor, we can turn the actual rubber wood logs into rubber as well to make getting those wires even easier. So over here by the lake, this is an Industrial Craft 2 rubber tree, fairly easy to spot. They're a darker color, and they also have a 2-leaf protrusion at the top there. They all have that same kind of little poke at the top, so you can kind of spot them from a distance. And if we look around at this one, you might have to clear some leaves to find it, but I'm fairly certain that all of them should have one of these guys, a little spot of sticky resin. And so with the tree tap, if we right-click, it's going to pop off, and we got ourselves some sticky resin. Nice. Now, you do get the sticky resin even if you don't use the tree tap. So if you just cut the tree down, you will get some sticky resin if there is a place for sticky resin on the tree. But I believe you get even more sticky resin if you use the tree tap. So it's definitely worthwhile. And we are going to need so much rubber that it's also definitely worthwhile us trying to get a bunch of rubber tree saplings and setting up our own little rubber tree farm back at base, even if it's just a manual tree farm for the time being. And so guys, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go away. I'm going to harvest pretty much all of these rubber tree saplings, starting with the tree tap and then chopping them down afterwards to try and find saplings. I'm going to head back to base, hopefully have a nice amount of seared stone that we can then use to make our smeltery even taller, and I'll be back in a second. And quite a bit of cobblestone smelting later, we now have so much more seared brick and a much larger smeltery. And so I've packed in the small 1x1 smeltery that we had before. We now have a smeltery that is technically 5x5 in size, but its internal size here is 3x3. And so what we can do now is we can put down the rest of the seared stone around the outside here to make this a bit taller. But before we do, I do have a little bit of a pet peeve which I would like to fix. And so what we can do here is if we craft a stick with an iron, we can get a chisel from the mod chisel. And if we right click with the chisel, we can put in our seared stone and we can change the way it looks. And I'm a much bigger fan of these seared bricks here. because they look a lot more like the actual Smeltery controller and like the seared tank. These both have the seared brick texture to them, and then we can use these instead to line our Smeltery. And I think just in general, these look a lot nicer. If you already have the seared stone down, you can pick them all up and chisel them if you'd like, but you can also just left click and cycle through them. Thankfully, the seared brick is the second one round, so if we just do a little bit of clicking around the outside here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, we can turn all of these into nicer looking seared brick, or at least nicer looking, in my opinion. I'm not too bothered about the ones that are in the floor. We're not going to see those all too often, but in general, and how am I going to get into that? I guess I'm going to have to break the fence. That is fine. 1, 2. There we go. I think this just looks a lot nicer and a lot more like what I expect a Smeltery to look like. I'm not a huge fan of the default seared stone texture, but nevertheless, if we get rid of this wooden hopper, we can see now that we have significantly more space in our Smeltery, 18 slots in total, as well as significantly more capacity for molten liquids and molten metals in the middle here, which is real nice indeed. So if we look at the recipe for the blast brick, we need 27 blast brick. You make it in sets of 3, which means we need 9 lots of everything here, which means 18 porcelain bricks, which we have, a lot of normal bricks, which I'm sure we have, and then 9 bronze ingots. Every bronze ingot is made from molten bronze, which is an alloy between tin and copper, and for every 3 millibuckets of copper and 1 millibucket of tin, you get 4 millibuckets of bronze. And so in real terms, that means that 3 copper and 1 tin makes 4 bronze ingots. And so if we're going to make the 9 that we need, we're going to have to take it, I think, one step further and go 3, 6, 9, and 12. So that should get us 12 bronze. We can then pull that out in both block and ingot form, because it's just going to be faster to pull out the block of bronze and then craft it, as opposed to pulling out all of the ingots individually. But once we have that, we should then be on our way to making the blast furnace. Now, while we wait for that, we can once again come over here and craft up our engineer's hammer. That is another quest complete. Although actually we don't even have 4 iron ingots yet. So let me go and put 4 iron ingots in there. While we wait for those to smelt up, we can get our block of bronze going, as well as at least 1, but actually 3 bronze ingots. And then we should be pretty much good to go. We should have everything it takes to make the blast brick, and then put the blast brick down to make the blast furnace. And the blast furnace is used for making the refined iron that we need to make a lot of the machines from Industrial Craft 2. To make the refined iron, you put in 1 iron ingot and some fuel. That will get you refined iron and some slag. So that's the reason we need it. Let's go ahead and pull these iron ingots out just to complete the quest here. We can craft our block of bronze into 9 ingots, and that should be pretty much everything taken care of. Do we have what it takes here? We do. Good stuff. So we'll grab all of those. And if memory serves me right, all we have to do with our blast brick is, first of all, figure out where we're going to put it, which is actually a good question. I think for now I'm going to put it over here, and I'll probably just move some of these drying racks in the future. But it's a 3 by 3 by 3 multi-block, so it looks something a little bit like this. The center is full, and so once you have all of them down, all you do is you grab the engineer's hammer, you right-click on the center front block, and boom, you have a blast furnace. Nice. Now, you normally can't use coal in a blast furnace, and this is no exception. And so in order to actually get the blast furnace up and running, we have to use our coal to make charcoal with our pre-existing wood, and then we can take that charcoal and put that charcoal into the blast furnace. Now, I can't help but notice that this is not smelting into charcoal. Is charcoal disabled altogether, or is there a separate way to make it? Apparently, we can make it with compressed sawdust, although this seems like not the way to do it, because we're quite a ways away from being able to make this precision sawmill. And so I'm actually not entirely sure how we go about doing this. Maybe the wood pile is how we go about doing this? Now, I've never made this wood pile here from forestry, but I guess we can give it a go. I'm actually not entirely sure how this works. The image shows clay and a wood pile. Can I open this? I can't. What if I put like a block of clay on top of that? I'm assuming that also does not work. Maybe we have to light it on fire in some form or fashion, like maybe make a flint and steel, and maybe that will work. Like, that definitely is not doing anything. For now, though, we have completed the first quest and the second quest, and we've also done the third quest, but it's just not registered, so I'll have to tear this down between episodes just to register that third quest there. But I'm not quite sure, actually, how we get the blast furnace up and running, and so what I'll do, guys, between episodes is I'll look into it and see if I can't figure out how we get the charcoal to run the blast furnace. But the last thing that I want to do in today's episode here is grab a little bit of the remaining bones that we have to make some more bone meal, and then plant down some of these rubber trees, which I have collected. So The good thing about the Industrial Craft 2 rubber trees, or one of the good things, is that they grow instantaneously with a single piece of bone meal, which is really nice. And the other good thing is that once you tap a tree, you'll see that there's still an outline there of where the resin was. And so if you leave this tree, eventually that resin will grow back. And so what we can do is we can plant a bunch of rubber trees, we can strip them of their leaves, and then every so often we can come back over and tap the pre-existing spots that we know contain the rubber to get even more resin going forward. And so that is exactly what I'm going to do. Between episodes, I will plant bone meal and harvest a bunch of rubber trees to get a bunch of rubber tree saplings. We'll set up a big old farm of rubber tree trees. And then next episode, we'll come back, we'll start making some refined iron, we'll start making our first Industrial Craft 2 machines, and we'll move on maybe even to getting a little bit of Botania done as well on our way to getting to the Nether. But for now, guys, as always, if you did enjoy the video and you want to see more All the Mods 3 Expert Mode in the future, be sure to go ahead and hit that like button. It really does help out a lot. Leave a comment down below, subscribe if you're new here to get notified as soon as new videos go out. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.